Hello, 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 hello. My name is Linda Murray Bullock. Welcome to the Business where we have business conversations for business people. Thank you for joining me here every Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, where we learn about what's happening in the business world. And today is not going to be any different. I am so excited about it. Yes, when I bring it to her, I want to tell you a couple of things. First of all, if you are a church or community group looking for grant funding, looking for funding, period, on March the 23rd, at 6:30 p.m. I think that's the time. No, I'm sorry. March the 23rd, 4 o'clock p.m. I am hosting Grad Men One-on-One, and it's on Eventbrite. It's on Eventbrite. Get your ticket, meet me, and I'm going to do it virtual and I'm going to do hybrid. So it's going to be virtual and in person. If you're in the Chattanooga area, then you can meet me in person. But if you're not, you're somewhere else in the world, and you still want to get that information, and you can still get your ticket, and I will send you a link in order for you to join me online. It's a 4-hour session where we're talking about how to get grant funding for you and your business. And so that's nonprofit or for-profit who are looking for grant funding. That's what we're doing. Also, if you'd like to be on the Business Plugs Mixer, that link is wherever you're watching this video. Come join me. Select your Sunday and let's talk about what you do and how you do it. With all that out of the way, my accountant and those people will be very happy. Let me introduce you to Rolanda McDuffie. I'll get it right in a minute. Hello, Rolanda. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I appreciate your invite to be a part of the mixer as well.
Absolutely. So we're talking about something that's very important for nonprofits today. And so I sound the alarm to tell all my nonprofits to ring, to tap in. But if you are out there and you have a friend who runs a nonprofit, you probably want to send them this way. Share this on your space because this is going to be a very interesting conversation. When you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how nonprofits, most people who start nonprofits have no idea what they've gotten into. So tell them who you are and what you do.
So, yes, my name is Rolanda McDuffie. I am a certified public accountant. I specialize in working with nonprofit organizations to get them financially fit through the areas of accounting, taxes, business advisory services, and board trainings. I definitely work with nonprofit organizations to ensure that they are grant compliant as well as IRS compliant and I'm sorry, I lost train of thought there, as well as audit readiness as well. So I work with nonprofit organizations to ensure that they're ready for their audits when it comes time for them to get those audits and IRS compliant grant compliance as well.
You keep nonprofits out of trouble.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Because when you start talking about auditing and you start talking about IRS, and being ready to get money, because there's a lot of things about IRS and auditing that nonprofits don't know. And so that's why we're doing this. Yeah. So when you talk about IRS ready or audit ready, what does that look like?
So that means because they're two different things, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start with the audit readiness. So a lot of times nonprofit organizations, when they start off, because they don't have a lot of funding coming in, they don't necessarily keep track of their finances the way that they should. Mm-hmm. And so that looks like not only just the money that's coming in the bank, but the proper documentation for what's coming in, whether it's cash or whether it's in-kind donations. Keeping proper records for that, as well as donors who are providing monies to the organization. And so I think in the beginning, many nonprofit organizations, they're focused on their mission and making sure the mission is accomplished, but they're not doing a great job in ensuring that the documentation of the funds that are coming in are being done properly.
Yeah, yeah. And so what does that look like? Like, how could that get them in trouble?
So it can get you in trouble, especially if you already have a grant and that donor is asking for an audit of the finances to ensure that the money that they provided to the organization has been spent properly. Now, if the organization actually gets an audit and they fail that, it could cause them to not get fund or to lose their funding for that particular donor. It could also cause them problems in getting funding for the years going forward as well. If they don't pass their audit. In addition, they spend a lot of money to get that audit completed, and if your finances are not in order, that's just money wasted in not having a clean audit. So I do provide audit preparedness or audit readiness services to assist nonprofits in getting ready for that audit before they get to that point of spending a lot of money and then they don't have the outcome that they're looking for.
Absolutely. And that audit is important because I get people ready for grants. And one of the things I ask them to include in their grant readiness practice is an audit. It's proof that they that they did not fail, that they actually passed. And so you get them ready for that.
Yes. And a lot of them, they need that, but most of them don't know how to get ready for the audit or how to prepare themselves or what even documentations that they need in order to pass that audit. So that's how I do assist them in some ways. Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. The other one was getting them ready for the second.
Yes. So making sure you stay IRS compliant, and that means making sure that you've completed all your 990s on time and have filed them with the IRS and provided the essential information that you need in order to file those documents. And it's not just about the financials that are included in the 990. It's about, the governance of the organization, the compliance of the organizations, your programs and services. And the 990 is actually a great way to tell your story to your donors so that you can potentially get more money or more funding for not just the current donors, but potentially new donors as well. So I work with nonprofit organizations to get them ready for that as well.
And see, that's the thing. I talked to a nonprofit CEO the other day. And he said that I had a friend helping me out. And he's just stopped filing 2 years ago. And so we had that lovely.
And it's important for founders and board of directors of nonprofit organizations to understand that nonprofit accounting and taxes is totally different from a for-profit organization. And a lot of times bookkeepers, accountants, and CPAs who only focus on for-profit organizations, they don't necessarily understand the intricacies that go into the reporting of nonprofit organizations. So it's really important that you get someone who specializes in nonprofits and not just someone who understands money or financing as well.
Absolutely. So you need somebody who just does your business.
Yes. It's important to understand what needs to be done when those taxes are completed too as well.
Absolutely. And that nonprofit is very different from a for-profit that may not report quarterly.
Yes, that's correct. And it's how not just reporting the revenue and expenses, but also how it's itemized. For example, as a nonprofit organization, it's important that you keep track of how you spend the money in programs versus administrative costs as well as fundraising. And so making sure that your financial statements are reported that way, that's really important because that information transfers over to your 990 as well. And then donors are actually looking at how you're spending that money, right? They only want to see a certain percentage of your expenses going towards administrative and fundraising costs. But most of that money should be going towards your programming. And the only way that they can determine that is if you're actually keeping track of those expenses in that particular format. So that's why it's really important.
Absolutely. Those 3 types of categories, those 3 line items of categories need to be correct and need to be separated so that it's a clear picture, right?
Right.
Yeah. The goal is not to have any questions.
Correct. And so I think the mindset of a lot of individuals who start nonprofits, they don't really understand those categories. And so they kind of just keep track of all the expenses together. And that's not appropriate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so let's talk about, even before we get to the taxing part, the reporting part, let's talk about that board.
Oh, now that's a big one. That's a big one. A lot of nonprofit founders, they start the organization and they assume that that organization is theirs. But in reality, they're just the founder of a organization that really belongs to the community. And so it's important that they have those board members a part of that organization, because the board is actually who runs the organization and not just the founder. And it's important that the founders of the organizations are also bringing in board members who can support the organization in their appropriate roles and provide the support in running those organizations. And they're not just a figurehead, so to speak, as a board member on the application or on documentation. That's really important.
Yeah. So if I'm looking for my board members and I have 30 friends and they like, I support you. Oh, that's such a great idea. Put me on the board. What can go wrong?
Oh, a lot. I honestly tell most of my clients, try not to choose your friends and family as board members, because 9 out of 10, your friends and family, they're only going to sign up to be your board member because that you asked, and they don't necessarily want to let you down or tell you no. So they'll say yes just to appease you. But if their passion is not in what your organization is providing, then they're not going to show up and be there for you and the organization in a manner that you're going to need them. So what you will find is that you're constantly doing the work on their behalf because they don't have the time, or they don't have the passion or the drive to do what you're asking. And they're only going to do it when they get ready or have the time. And so, unless again that they have the passion, truly have a passion for what you're engaging in, I would say don't do it. It's just probably going to ruin a friendship, and you're not going to get what you need out, or the organization is going to get what they need out of that person.
And how impactful is that?
It's very impactful because as I mentioned, the board members are the ones who actually run the organization. So if you don't have board members who are truly involved in what's going on with the organization, then they can't be there to assist the organization, whether we're talking about fundraising, whether we're talking about volunteering, or even providing strategic planning for the organization. And that is their main purpose of being a part of the organization, for the governance and to assist in governance and compliance, but also in fundraising for the organization as well. So if they're not a part or playing their part, then there is a lot that's missing.
So if I can't Pookie to be on the board, where should I look for my board members?
I would say find people in the community. One great resource is LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to do a search for people in your area, find out what they enjoy through their volunteer service, because that information is also listed in LinkedIn. You can kind of find out whether or not there's some synergy in what your mission of the organization is and what they're doing. And then you can find, or just reach out to them and explain to them what you're doing, and maybe set up a meeting to see if they have a passion for what you're doing or are interested in what you're doing, and just explain to them what your mission of the organization, your goals, and how they can assist you in what you're trying to do.
I love it. I love it. I found another resource to be United Way.
That's a
United,
great one.
yeah, because United
Mhm.
Way has access, and they're everywhere. I mean, they're all over the country, and so this is not to any segment of America. This is like all of America. So
Mhm.
if you have a United Way, they are great referrals, people for board members, and a lot of them actually have a part of their mission to help boards, people who want to work on boards, meet nonprofits that need board members. So I
It's a
found a
great resource.
great resource. Absolutely, great resource. And so we're talking about nonprofits and the things that the conversations a lot of the executives have. So what you said, I'm going back a little. What you said is, even though I'm a founder, I don't own the nonprofit. And
No.
so I think people open nonprofits and they want to treat it like it's a for profit because they don't know the
Mhm.
difference.
They don't know the difference.
And I have heard, and seen instances where the founder gets voted off the island because the board decides to go a different way.
And yes, that can happen for sure. And that's why it's important that you get a board of directors who have the same mission and the same passion and the desires that you have for your organization so that everyone is in aligned. I've also seen where it's happened where the founder may not necessarily be abiding by the rules and the bylaws as well. And so they are also voted out of the organization because of those reasons. The bylaws are there to set the standard for the rules of the organization and how it's going to run. And so everybody on the board has to follow those bylaws, not just the individuals that the founder invites into the organization. So those are two things that I think founders need to be aware of. Be careful who you invite in. And I say that to say, just make sure that the alignment of the mission is in order, and then making sure that you too are abiding by the rules of the organization or the bylaws as well.
That's a good segue to the fiduciary responsibility of all the members.
Yes,
that run the operation.
That is very true. Everybody has a fiduciary duty, both equally and separately. And so they can be sued for things that go on within the organization, especially if I don't want to say it, well, especially if it's done on purpose, right? But even if it's not done on purpose, the organization or the individuals on the board members can actually still be sued for things that go on within the organization. So it's important that there's board training that happens for the new board members or all board members that sit on the board. So everyone is clear what their roles and responsibilities as well as fiduciary duties are within the organization to keep the organization protected. And first and foremost, the first and foremost fiduciary duty is to maintain or to make sure that you look out for the organization first and foremost before you look out for yourself. And so it's important as board members that you always maintain that level of that standard when you're dealing with a nonprofit organization.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. One thing you said is the organization belongs to the community.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I remember I was a secretary for a nonprofit, and I remember that they, explained to you that if you should go out of business, they used to decide tomorrow to close it, you don't get to reap all the benefits of what you have acquired. What was supposed to happen is those access should go to another nonprofit, and it has to get the IRS's approval.
Yes. And that's very important. And that's one of the reasons why a nonprofit is called a nonprofit, is because the founders and the leaders of the organization can't profit from the organization. So to your point, when it does go out of business, they have to transfer those assets that are left over, specifically to an organization that has a mission very similar to theirs. And so that those monies that were donated to the charity are still going to be used in another charity for that same purpose. And that's the reason why the IRS requires that at the closing of at the closing of a nonprofit organization.
Absolutely. I always refer people to the Center of Nonprofit in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
For questions like where is that a good place for nonprofits to go for help?
That's a great place to go for sure. Mm-hmm. It's a great hub. You can also, Candid is also a great place to go for information or resources for nonprofit organizations as well. There's a lot of information that you can find out, not just about your organization, but other nonprofit organizations when you're wanting to understand what they're doing as far as their missions and accomplishments. You can also look up their 990s and find out more information about them on that website too.
Yeah, I love that. I've been a part of them. I've been a part of the Foundation Center. since
Okay.
way back when. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about nonprofits and we're talking about donations and how people help nonprofits, which as a nonprofit, they have access to more funding simply
Mhm.
because of the way the system's set up. But then taking those donations and taking those items people are donating, how important is it that those items and that funding be used for the intended purpose?
Well, it's very important, extremely important. So there's something called restricted and unrestricted assets when it comes to nonprofit organizations, and a lot of that has to do with the donations that are coming in. So, for example, an unrestricted donation may be when a donor just gives money to the nonprofit. They don't tell you how to use it or when to use it. They just provide that those funds to you. Now, with unrestricted monies, you can do whatever you want to do. You can use it for salaries, you can use it for programs, you can use it for fundraising costs, whatever needs that the organization has at that time. But there's also something called restricted assets or temporarily restricted assets, which would be donations that someone is giving. And so, for example, if you have an after school program and a donor provides you those funds and says you can only use these for books for your after school program. Well, that money can only be used for books for the after school program and can't be used for anything else. Even if you don't decide to use that money in the current year, you would just have to transfer it over or hold on to the money, I should say, until you have a need for books for your after school program. It can never be used for any other reason other than what that donor specified at the time of the donation. And it's very important that you keep track of these donations in your financial records or in your accounting records, because if someone ever came back to ask questions, anybody can ask questions. They want to see what funds were restricted, what they were restricted for, and then how you spent those restricted monies. So all of that should be kept in your accounting system so that when you run your reports, that information can be derived very easily and readily at the time that it's being asked.
And so when we talk about donations and we talk about funding and different things, um, I I had a situation where a donor went back and took their donation back.
Oh,
Yeah,
why did they do that? I'm just curious. Did they have a
I have.
reason?
They reallocated it to another nonprofit situation.
Interesting.
Yeah, but we know that grants and donations can have some type of not necessarily restrictions, but instruction.
Yes, very sure. And what I did not mention are in-kind donations. That is very important as well. So I think a lot of nonprofits don't necessarily think about in-kind donations, but that's just another way for you to get funding in your organization, even though it's not cash, but it's just less. It's a way to receive items that you don't have to spend money for. And so you don't have to worry about the expense because the donation is given to you, whether we're talking about supplies or clothing or yeah, supplies, clothing, goods or food that you want to give away. Those would be in-kind donation of goods. And so that too has to be reported in your accounting records as well. And so if there's a restriction on how those things should be given out, you also have to expense those the same way. So, for example, if there's clothes that are given and the donor says they want it to go to single mothers only, right? You have to only give those donations or that donation to mothers who have, or single women who have children. And so that is something that you also want to be cautious of as well.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that because Good 360 is one
Hmm.
of the organizations that does a lot of good in-kind gifts or
Yes.
in-kind access to different donations and things. And so, and it's a great resource for
Mhm.
nonprofits. I don't know how many know that they're out there, but that's been I've watched them grow as well. And so, just like in the for-profit world, um, we have the state of Tennessee, I'm in Tennessee, but we have the state that gives a vetting, right? They have certifications, but with nonprofits, you don't need the certifications, but there are places where nonprofits are reported whether they're in good standing or not, right?
Yes. So the IRS, anyone can go on the IRS.gov and do a search for nonprofit organizations, either by EIN number or by name. And the IRS on that website, it will tell whether or not a nonprofit organization is in good standing, whether or not they've received a revocation letter, and if so, when that letter was sent. And it also has copies of their Form 990. If they only did a postcard, it just shows that a postcard was actually met or provided for that particular year. In addition to that, there's other websites that information can be found on, such as Candid, and GuideStar. Yes, GuideStar as well. So the information is out there and available. But I would also encourage nonprofit organizations to even have that on their websites, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of donors, I should say, will look on your 990 to determine whether or not they want to even give you a donation, probably even prior to even speaking to you. And so if you complete your 990 correctly, it will tell a story about your organization. And if that story is being told correctly, many donors will buy into what you're telling or saying within your 990. And I'll say that to say a lot of smaller nonprofit organizations will complete a form, the 990 postcard, just because it's simple and it's easy. There's only 8 questions that it asks, but you may be missing out on potential donations just because there's not a lot of available information to the donors out there. And so if you don't have a lot of information on your organization, they may go to a larger organization or a organization that is or at least completing the 990 EZ, so that they get an understanding of what their mission is, who their board of directors are, what their programs are, and how they're spending that money. And so that may be something that you want to be cautious of as the smaller organizations, maybe looking into doing a 990 EZ instead of that postcard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you want to make sure, again, the whole goal is to remove any questions, right? You want them to know, like, and trust you and know that you are capable and reliable to do what it is you say you're doing. I love this conversation. So is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you would like them to take away from this discussion?
There's so many different things. But this has been a great conversation. I will say that I did write a book called Creating a Successful Nonprofit by Knowing Your Numbers. It covers the fiduciary duties, roles, and responsibilities of the board of directors, as well as some of the conversation that we discussed here today, and other ways that you can grow your organization by just knowing the numbers. So that may be a great pickup for you. It can be found on Amazon as well as my website.
Absolutely. And there's a link to it wherever you're watching this video. Go ahead and get that book. And you have an ebook.
Yes, I do have an ebook as well. So it is 7 mistakes that nonprofits make and how to avoid them. It's a free ebook that you can download as well.
That's what I have attached. The ebook is attached. So if you would like the free ebook or you want to go to the website and get her full book, then you have access to both of those. And so thank you for your yes. Thank you for coming on and helping us get our act together.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. This was a great conversation, and I love to assist nonprofit organizations so that they can grow their mission and fulfill what they started. So
I love it. I love it. Who should be contacting you?
So I work with nonprofit organizations. I would say anywhere between about 100,000 to about 3 million. So we work with, nonprofit organizations from many different areas.
Yeah, okay. I love it. Again, thank you for joining me. My name is Linda Murray Bullard. They call me the business club. If you'll hold for 1 minute, Rolanda, but I'll see the rest of you next Sunday, 7:00 p.m. Eastern time here on the Business Plugs Mixer. I'll get it right in a minute. Have a great one, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.